Well, carrying on from the championship at Hickling won by Nigel Blake, he sailed actually on the banner of another moth club, and that was the Lee Haven Sailing Club, who I suppose nobody had ever heard of. But Lee Haven Club was situated on the River Lee between two locks and close to Ferry Lane leading between Tottenham and Walthamstow. And the enthusiasts there had about a dozen moths, and they decided they got permission to build a compound on the towpath, just behind the towpath, so they had access to the river, which was quite wide and pretty straight all the way. And the Stonebridge Lock, which was the downriver lock, that was pretty well next to one of the biggest furniture makers in the UK at the time, which was Harris Liebus.
Oh, yeah.
And in their car park there were upwards of 100 lorries, furniture lorries. Because over the years that all sort of disappeared. I don't know what happened to them. But the interesting thing about the Lee Haven is that they had no club room, so they managed to buy a barge from somewhere on the Thames and got it delivered and shunted into Limehouse Lock. And they then walked it about the 12 or 13 miles along the towpath. They actually pulled the barge along, taking it in turns, and they got it up to Stonebridge Lock and moored it alongside, and then they had a acetylene welder come and he cut portholes in it, and they made quite a decent club room in the finish. The only thing, as soon as you went downstairs in it, the place, it smelled very strongly of grain, which is what the barge had been used for. But they decided to have an open meeting there, and they managed, and of course when you remember what time of what year it was, they were one of the rare ones to actually get sponsors for their open meeting. It was an unheard of thing in those days, and it was sponsored by Will's Capstan cigarettes. And a very nice trophy was made in the form of a wooden capstan, and the club had to move eventually, and the second of my three sons, he still has a capstan trophy in his possession because nobody ever asked it back. The amusing thing is they had a kind of three-wheeler loudspeaker van going along the towpath, giving a running commentary on the race. Yeah. And before the start they were going around handing out free cigarettes in packets of two capstans for people. That's rather funny. And for the first open meeting there were about 25 boats, and they came from quite, all over London, and Charlie Reeves came as well. And the powers that be in the club had been in touch with the Conservancy Board, and they persuaded them to keep the water level high between the two locks. Anyway, their open meeting started, and there was this little three-wheeler, a bit like Fours and Horses thing, going with a loudspeaker on top saying so-and-so's in the lead. And I happened to be in the lead and got to the downriver mark. It was pretty much a very broad reach to get there, and hardened up round that mark to start the beat back up river, and pulled the main sheet in and started sailing, but I wasn't going anywhere. So all those that were behind thought, oh good, we're catching up, so they come herring round the mark and pulled their sails in, but by the time they got their mainsail in to go round the mark, they were about 10 yards further to leeward away from the mark. And what had happened apparently is that some barges had gone aground down in Hackney, and an emergency call come round to release the water. So they opened the lock gates further down, let a vast amount of water go through, and in the finish we all were in the middle of what the River Lee was then a stream, and we had to walk the boats back to the club room by tying the main sheet in tight and walking the boat back up to the club room holding the top of the mast. And that was one of the most funny things that's ever happened to me in moth sailing. Nevertheless, they held quite a few meetings after that, and then when they were forced to leave through different things, there was a terrible lot of vandalism down there. They were always getting windows broken and boats damaged, you know, the fence ripped up. And they moved then to a little lake called Hyams Park Lake, and this lake was quite adjacent to Whipps Cross Hospital in Leytonstone. And the chap who was running the club was Ken Ford, the chap that sold me my first Marlin rocket, and Ken opened it for youngsters, and in the finish he had about 60 local kids there, and they had workshops and they built their own moths there. And later on, Ken was so ambitious that he got them to build a yacht. It took them about 5 years, but they did build this yacht and had it taken down to Brightlingsea and sailed it there. But, you know, the club gradually disintegrated, one thing or the other. I thought it mentioned because Nigel Blake really didn't have anything to do with Lee Haven Sailing Club, but he needed a club to say he was sailing for something. So I suggested, oh, well, try Ken Ford, he won't mind you using his club's name for a bit of kudos, you know.